We'll start again.
Now. Good evening. My name is Lee Barth, and I am the first vice president of the League of Women Voters of Newcastle. I'd like to welcome you and our candidates to the forum for the Chappaqua Central School District School Board election. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots political organization of women and men. This means that the League does not support or oppose one candidate or political party over another. We are dedicated to the active and informed participation of citizens in government at all levels. The League works to educate voters, increase understanding and debate on major policy issues, and influence policy through education and advocacy. The League takes positions on policies, not candidates or parties. You can find information about the League, including how to join and support our work, at our website, www.lwvnewcastle.org. Our website also has a page dedicated to this election, including an online voter's guide containing information submitted by all the candidates on the ballot. That is for both the school board and the library board. We are pleased that all 4 candidates for the school board are participating in tonight's forum. There are also 2 open seats for the library board of trustees to be filled. Both of the candidates were not available this evening, but John Harrison, who is here, you can chat with him after our event. He's not going to be making any statements tonight, and George Benak is the other candidate. Information about all candidates can be found in the voter's guide. We thank the many community members who submitted nearly 100 questions to our committee for tonight's forum. The committee worked hard to identify the range of topics that were of interest to the community and to compile a list of questions to cover as many topics as possible within the time frame that is reasonable for all participants. This evening's proceedings are being taped by Newcastle Community Media Center and are being live streamed on YouTube. Thanks to Carrie Krams and Freedom Weeks for facilitating this. The recording will be available on demand at nccmc.com and YouTube. All other recording is strictly prohibited, so no photos, no cell phone video tonight, please. Any public sharing or rebroadcast of this candidate forum must be in its entirety and unedited. Thanks to our timekeeper tonight. It's actually a group of timekeepers. Board members Mary Kirsch, Sheila Burnson, and Haley Ferraro, and to our moderator this evening, Alice McNamara from the League of the River Towns. Alice will now go over the ground rules for tonight's forum, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Lee. First, I'm going to ask you to please silence all your devices, and that applause was nice, but please hold all applause and verbal comments until after the closing statements. In accordance with League of Women Voters policy, I need to reiterate that I'm not a voter in this district. And as a reminder, election day for the school board candidates is Tuesday, May 16th, and polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. These are the ground rules that the candidates have agreed to. The order of opening statements has been determined by lots that were drawn before the meeting. The order of closing statements will be in the reverse order of the opening statements. The order in which the candidates will respond to further questions will be rotated. Throughout the forum, no comments of a personal or abusive nature will be permitted. Any such comments will be ruled out of order. Each candidate has up to 1.5 minutes for their opening statement. They will then answer the questions. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. The timekeepers will indicate when 1 minute remains, when 30 seconds remains, and again, when time is up. Each candidate is entitled to up to 2 30-second rebuttals during the question portion by raising their hand at the conclusion of all responses to that question. Additional 30 seconds rebuttals may be granted at my discretion. Questions from the community were submitted prior to the candidates night by email and electronic form. The audience will not be able to submit questions during the live event. At the conclusion of the question period, each candidate will give a closing statement of up to 1.5 minutes. As moderator, I reserve the right to allow rebuttal after the closing statements if warranted by the content of any closing statements. Such rebuttal will be 30 seconds. There are 4 candidates for 2 positions on the Chappaqua Central School District Board. Each term is a 3-year term. In the order that they will be giving their opening remarks, and they are seated left to right, they are Shakufa Rajabadze, Alyssa Dorfman, Berit Flom, and Matthew Auerbach. We will begin with the opening statements.
Hello, and thank you all so much for being here and for the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. It's a great privilege to be in a town where so many people care about education. I'm Shakufe. I'm a passionate and committed educational professional with a master's from Oxford University and a PhD from the University of California, Berkeley. I've taught preschool and college freshmen reading, writing, literature, and research. I've run educational school-wide and national educational initiatives in 3 main categories: humanities and history, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and arts access. Currently, I'm a program manager in an educational nonprofit where I work with principals, administration, classroom teachers, and teaching artists and students to organize and oversee arts residencies in K-12 schools in all 5 boroughs of New York City. I'm running because there are many students who do not feel seen and heard, because there's a mental health crisis in our school, because in order for a child to thrive and not just survive in school, they must feel supported and safe. I have the skill set to address these issues. I've served in many positions that make up a school. I've been a teacher. I've conducted formal observations, been conducted informal observations. I've discussed and designed standardized curriculum. I'm a parent with children going to go through Chappaqua schools. My professional and doctoral background has given me the skill set to listen, research, strategize, and the courage to advocate even if it means coming up against systems.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Dorfman. I have a Bachelor of Science from Cornell University, and I've lived in Chappaqua with my husband and daughters for 16 years. My previous career was in financial planning, and currently I'm a professional organizer. My oldest daughter graduated from Greeley in 2020 and attends Vassar. My middle daughter is a junior at Greeley, and my youngest is in 6th at Bell. I'm the only candidate to have sent a child all the way through our schools, while I also remain deeply entrenched in our district. This allows me a global perspective, and it's imperative that the board have a member with this vantage point. The board will have a void in this perspective next year that only I can fill. I have 16 years of institutional knowledge about our schools. I was honored to be in the Bell Middle School PTA chair, and I volunteered in our schools since my arrival in 2007. I was at Royenbrook for 14 years straight and have held many chair positions such as Seasons of Giving, New Family Outreach, and Book Fair. I've attended many board meetings over the years, and I have the full understanding of the role. I have extensive fiscal experience from my previous career in retail financial planning. The Teachers Union has endorsed my candidacy, and I'm honored to have their support. I feel our biggest concerns in the district right now are the safety and support of our children, both physically and emotionally, our teacher retention, and our ability to attract new high-level teachers and our program growth while remaining fiscally responsible. I'm the candidate who best knows our district, and my unique perspective allows me a deep understanding of how to accomplish our shared goals.
Good evening. My name is Berit Flom, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. Also my family, neighbors, the amazing teachers in this district that also endorsed me, and of course everyone watching here tonight. Being informed about our children's education and holding the district accountable is vital, so thank you all. I believe strongly in working together to achieve excellence and hope that you will vote for me so that I can continue to do that in our district. Over the past year, I successfully worked with a group of parents to advocate for the expansion of before and after school care on-site programs in all of the elementary schools, and we were successful for next year. I was a persistent advocate who showed up to the board meetings to represent our group. And while attending those meetings, I saw the important work that our board does and recognized that I could be an asset. I'm a listener, an information gatherer, and someone who never accepts the answer, well, that's just how it's always been done. I ask hard questions and I listen to all sides. I am a lawyer. I have experience advocating for disabled clients while they're trying to navigate government bureaucracies. and I previously worked as a bankruptcy restructuring attorney representing trustees, fiduciaries, and others in national and international cases. I can do hard, complex, nuanced work, but I will always work together with you to build on Chappaqa's amazing reputation. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Matt Auerbach. I moved to Chappaqua in 2020 with my wife Danielle, my daughter Ruby, who is now a first grader at West Orchard, and my son Reese, who will be there next year. I feel a deep connection to this community and all the families I've met along the way. The kids in particular, who I've met, coached, and mentored, have made a significant imprint on me as a person. And running for the seat is just the next step in giving back to the community that has already given so much to me. My initial motivation was to push forward initiatives to ensure the safety and security of our students and faculty while at school. While this issue is still a top priority, my many discussions these past weeks have illuminated many more. We need to be elevating the voices of our teachers. We need to empower our students to think critically and allow and encourage viewpoint diversity. We need to ensure that all levels of education in Chappaqua are being nurtured. We need to cultivate a pathway of community under which all children's educational needs are met without a failure in addressing the social and emotional component necessary in developing great citizens. We need to accomplish all of these challenges with a mindful eye on the fiduciary responsibility that a board member has, one that my professional career as an equity trader and manager has well primed me for. At the end of the day, my understanding of the role of being a great board member is one who serves as a conduit between the community and administration. The education of our children is a collaborative enterprise. In voting for me, you're supporting someone who's approachable, a good listener, an active engager, and one who's willing to challenge the status quo. I'm a proud, visible, and dedicated member of this community. I'm doing this to represent all of us without ever losing the sight of the real reason I am here, the well-being and the education of all of our children.
Thank you. The first question will be asked first to Ms. Dorfman, and this is a multi-part question. What do you think is the most critical responsibility of a Board of Education member? How has your experience and expertise prepared you to engage with both district personnel and the community to address a wide range of potential issues and differing needs and opinions?
I think the most important responsibility of someone on the board is to listen to the community. You advocate for all the children when you have this role, and you have to make sure that everything you've done is well thought out, well intended, researched, debated. Luckily, our board has 5 people on it, and therefore there's many opportunities for debate and discussion on any idea that comes before the board. My personal experience in the district is that I've been here for a million years, 16, and I know many people in both the administration, the PTA, the community, at all district levels because I've been in every school. So I feel that I am well equipped to reach across the aisle, so to speak, and speak to anyone in our community who wants to work with me and always have the best interests of the kids at heart, because that is the reason that you have this job.
To me, the most critical responsibilities of a board member are twofold. The first is you're essentially the superintendent's boss, and you need to work with her and with the administration to make sure that the school district is meeting our expectations and the goals that are set in the 5-year strategic plan, as well as based on scores that we're receiving from the students. The second role of the board members is to be a fiduciary. And that means that we're looking at the budget, setting the budget, and making sure that it is responsible and sustainable on a going forward basis. My experience lines up well with this. As I mentioned previously, I've been at the board meetings for the past year and I've seen how they've worked. I have also worked with the district to achieve great things for our students and our families. And based on that, I know that I can continue to work with the other board members, with the administration. Additionally, as a former bankruptcy attorney, I had to make sure that I was looking at finances from very complicated cases and analyzing and creating solutions in very difficult situations. I think that it's important that we're not just spending money for the sake of spending money. We need to make sure that our resources are being allocated appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, can you repeat the question for me?
Sure.
Thanks.
What do you think is the most critical responsibility of a Board of Education member? How has your experience and expertise prepared you to engage with both district personnel and the community to address a wide range of potential issues and differing needs and opinions.
Okay, so personally, I would say that I don't have that many skills, but the skills that I do have are I am very approachable and I am a good connector of people, and I can work across the aisle, and I think for me the most important thing a board member can possess is the ability to relate and connect with other people. I can serve as a bridge between the community and what they want to see accomplished and the administration. I'm approachable, I'm a good listener, I'm always happy to engage in this process. I've taken every phone call that I've gotten, I've responded to every email. I'm not stubborn in any belief system, so I have an open mind and I'm willing to engage, and I'm smart enough to know the things that I do not know. As far as the fiduciary part of the job, which is a huge component, I mean, my professional experience speaks for itself. I worked at a hedge fund for 11 years. I've been managing my own portfolio business for the last 7. So as far as keeping a fiduciary eye on things and coming from it from a budgetary and fiscal responsibility perspective, I think that I'm pretty qualified.
There, you know, as my fellow candidates have said, there are so many responsibilities, right, for a Board of Education member. There's a fiduciary responsibility. The largest stakeholders of the budget are the taxpayers, are you. You're an advisory council, you're not an operational, board, so you're liaising between parents and the district. But I think maybe the last few years of what's happened in this country and Board of Educations has kind of revealed there's a really great responsibility in the Board of Education role. And I think that's come to be seen in the ways that we've seen Board of Educations in this country completely change what a child understands about the world they live in and knows about the world they live in. It's a completely different narrative. And I think that is the most critical responsibility, is recognizing the gravity of that power and to really hold it and be responsible with it. I'm talking to, classroom teachers, principals, administrations, Department of Education in New York City, classroom teachers across the Department of Education, council members whose funding makes these possible. Like, there's all these different stakeholders and all these different conversations you're having, and everyone is kind of coming at it from a different perspective in terms of like what's going to happen in the classroom. And so being able to kind of understand the different viewpoints and be able to kind of bring it all together while it is made possible when you really understand the gravity of the power and the responsibility that you have. And I really, really respect and understand that.
Okay, thank you. The next question, the first to answer the next question will be Ms. Flom. How will you prioritize and balance limited budget resources given significant community asks for things like additional school safety resources, smaller class sizes, more teachers, language instruction?
Thank you. So I think that when you're talking about safety, class sizes, language instruction, for me, prioritizing making a district that feels welcome and safe is most important, because at the end of the day, that's how we're going to have students who are succeeding beyond Chappaqua schools. And for me, talking about balancing the budget, I recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all answer. I think that we need to continue to evaluate each year going forward what is most important. The community has raised significant concerns surrounding safety. However, there isn't one set answer for that. Similarly, talking about foreign language adding to the classrooms at an elementary school level is a great opportunity to look in the 5-year strategic plan. I think we're not just focusing on one particular year, but if we're looking to the future and coming up with things like a long-term facilities project and a long-term facilities plan, and that helps us to budget going forward. Similarly, we'll be able to focus on teacher retention, which will then impact class sizes and having things like foreign language in the elementary schools, because it's very expensive to continue to hire new teachers. Everyone knows that when you're going through the hiring process, it can be a lot of information and a lot of resources dedicated to that.
Okay, so let me start off by saying that I don't look at our kids' safety and security inside of school as a line item on a balance sheet, so that part is sort of a non-negotiable for me. When you're balancing a budget, you spend and you take away. I think that there are always places to cut. You have to get in there with a fine-tooth comb and you gotta figure out where you're gonna cut, but as far as the safety and security of our children, that's not really a negotiable. I agree that class size is also extremely important. We need to keep the class size, particularly at the elementary level, where I think you really learn to love learning and flourish as a child being educated at the young age, in the elementary and middle levels. I think you really need to keep those class sizes small. I understand that we spend and we spend to expand and we spend to keep up with the times technologically on the high school level, but I do think that items can be cut, and people won't want to hear this, but items can be cut to keep the class sizes smaller at the youth level, where I think it's really important that we sort of embrace the fact that we live in such a small community that you can develop a pathway program from elementary, middle to high school, where you don't have to neglect the younger kids. You have to focus on them just as much, and I agree, we should be having foreign language at the youth level. We should be having elementary schools starting to expose our kids to foreign languages. We live in an interconnected society, and I think that's important. And I think you have to make tough choices on the budget always. So if you're gonna spend, you have to cut something somewhere.
So when thinking of the budget, I really push back at thinking of it as some, it's not some formulaic calculation of money that you take and spend and you it's that like money that taxpayers have poured into account, right? A budget is a reflection of the values of a community. And so that's the gravity with which we have to handle the budget. And so to do that work, we have to first learn what the values of the community are. And so we have to really get, as a board of education member, you really have to understand like what are the values of the community and make sure that the budget is most reflecting those, because what we put money to is what we care about, and what we take money from is what we care less about. I hold and handle budgets and work with various stakeholders, and as like I said, I understand that the most important stakeholders of this process are the taxpayers. And I think when it comes to some choices like, for example, class sizes, which is something that, there's a lot of concern and care about, there are things that can cost a lot of money at first, but they actually make things a lot efficient in a lot of different areas. Like class size is one where if there are smaller classes, it's much easier to do differentiated learning. It's just going to be easier. There's less students. It's going to make it much easier to kind of work on belonging, right? Like instead of paying a lot of money for like different other belonging, belonging activities, it's going to be easier to create a community of belonging, a community of friendship in a smaller class size. It's going to be easier to be able to like make sure that every child is included regardless of race or sexuality or disability. So
I agree that we want to have the safety of our students be the number one priority. And I also know that we want small class size. I agree with all of that. I think when it comes down to it, we are gonna have to make some hard choices. If we do go ahead with the SRO program, it's gonna cost $750,000 that are not in the budget. Now, that's not to say I don't think we should do it. I think we should do it in some form, whether it's SROs or just increased police presence as a deterrent at the school. I think it's important. I think that our children's safety is paramount. But that being said, it's gonna cost a lot of money, and smaller class sizes, we have to deal with the tax cap that is already in place. We have to deal with a teacher contract that's already in place. So I think when you think about these things, we can make them happen if it's a priority for the community. But when we do it, we're going to have to make cuts, and what we cut is obviously going to be a hard decision. And I think that's where I come into play, as having had so many years in this district. I really understand what things are bigger deals and what things aren't. And when you go through with that fine-tooth comb, I think you need someone who's been through every level and every school, and who knows what programs are successful and which aren't, and who understands what the ramifications are of cutting something at the elementary level or at the high school level, and how it rolls up and affects all the kids in the district when they miss out on a program or some kind of specialized instruction. So I think it really helps to have someone in that role making those hard decisions, which we're going to have to make, someone who has the knowledge to look at everything and decide what to do.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Mr. Auerbach.
We have a rebuttal.
Oh,
Not for me.
Sorry, I was trying to follow the procedure of
Yes,
raising my hand.
thank you. Okay, we have, Ms. Flom has, 1 30-second rebuttal. Go ahead.
One of the things that I think none of the candidates have talked about tonight with respect to the budget is the fact that there are opportunities of growing revenue through other sources, and this is something that I have spoken with the administration about, which means that we wouldn't just be focusing on how we're getting resources through property taxes, but there's other ways such as fundraising, grants, and donations, and this is something that the administration is thinking about looking into going forward and can be helpful when we're looking at the budget. Additionally, I think that given the fact that there were recent state audit results that showed some discrepancies, it would be important when you're talking about the budget to think about how we're responding to the state audit.
Okay. Okay, all right, Mr. Auerbach, to you. The school district recently sent out a survey about school safety. If elected, how will you contribute to the decisions the Board of Education and district administration will be making regarding school safety?
I believe that to be prepared to learn, our students and our faculty need to feel safe. What I do for a living is very, very data driven, but more importantly than the raw data is the trends. And while some data, there's been some data used that I think is a little dated relative to the argument against having an SRO inside of these school buildings. We have one at Greeley, and I believe that we should have one at every single level of the school system here. And the trends are telling you that that is necessary. I mean, there were 46 school shootings in 2022. That's the most in any year since Columbine. Happened to be my senior year of high school, so I remember it well. And at that time, it felt like it was something that could never happen again, and now it just keeps happening. We've had a failure at the federal level to enforce stricter gun laws and address the mental health issues that have plagued our society and continue to. So we have a responsibility at the local level to protect our own and protect our children. Where Chappaqua is uniquely laid out, our schools are sprawling through the district. My children will go to West Orchard and Seven Bridges, which are 10 minutes away from the police station, and that's just too long. I understand the SRO is not a panacea, but it is certainly a deterrent and it's a last line of defense, and I think that it's something that we should highly consider, and I would, if on the board, I will strongly advocate for it. I've engaged law enforcement on this issue. They tend to universally agree with having the SROs inside the building, and the argument, like I said, cannot be the budget because our kids' lives are at risk here.
So anyone who's asked or cares to know the answer to this question, I'm assuming already understands what's being happened in terms of safety in this district. So I'm really just gonna go. I think that what's next on people's mind is SROs. So I'm just gonna go there. So there's nothing that gives me more anxiety as I'm preparing to send my daughter to kindergarten than the realization that more and more parents are putting their kids on buses in the morning and they're not coming back in the afternoon. And I think we all deserve to call that what it is and to understand what we're talking about. We're having this conversation because our representatives and our lawmakers do not want to protect our children. They just don't. They don't want to protect our children. And I understand why we want to think of SROs. Like, I understand we're scared and the easiest solution is to put a good guy with a gun in front of a bad guy with a gun and, hope that it goes for the best. But a multi-billion-dollar industry has somehow manipulated us into thinking that the solution to end gun violence for our children is to surround them with more guns. And it's just not true. It's ineffective. It doesn't work. The data shows that it's not true. Over and over again, expulsions and suspensions increase wherever they go. They don't reduce the rate of injuries. But I go to schools regularly with SROs, and last week an SRO did its whole elaborative check-in and then let me into the school building during a lockdown. Like, literally just let me into the building during a lockdown. They don't work. And if we want to find a solution I want a solution that does that not a single child and not a single teacher dies, and we need to find that, but it's not SROs.
Christine Ackerman has said that the survey that the district has put out so far has gotten some of the highest results and response rate that she's seen yet, and it's not even done until the 17th. So if you haven't already done that, please put your results in. I would really looking forward to seeing what the community as a whole has to say on this issue, because I think seeing the results of that survey, in addition to looking at a lot of the data that people are talking about, will help us come to this decision. Personally, my daughter's been involved in 2 lockdowns since we've lived in this district, one at Bell years ago and one at Greeley very recently. Luckily, they were both false alarms, but I got texts from my daughter twice, terrified, from a closet. And as much as those 10 minutes, both times, those 20 minutes were the worst moments of my life, I need to know that we're doing the most that we can to protect our kids. And Officer Michelle, who's the current SRO at Greeley, has been really successful. We've had her there for a number of years. She is very well liked and the program is working. So I really feel like we just don't want to look back and regret not doing more for our kids. It's not a panacea. It doesn't solve all the problems. If someone has bad intent, they have bad intent. But at least it might slow someone down. At least it's a visual deterrent to people who might be driving by. And I just feel like the biggest regret we could have is not having done more. And I just think that for our kids' safety and concern, we can't risk it. So I am pro to the SRO or some level of increased police presence. And we'll have to debate that, how much it costs and in the meetings.
I'll support any measure that is backed by research, desired by our community, and is fiscally sustainable. It's an amazing conversation that we're having with our community right now, with the parents. There's obviously a serious need to pay attention to these issues. But my position is that there's no one correct answer. We need to continue to assess and update all of our procedures and all of our options regularly. Specifically, even with respect to what Shakufe said, training. Training is important. Training our staff, coordinating with law enforcement in the town, as well as hardening other vulnerabilities in the school, and reviewing safety protocols, including lockdown and lockout procedures. It doesn't have to be all or nothing this year. We can continue to add additional measures every year as best as we can on a going forward basis to protect our kids from anything happening. However, the most important thing is prevention so that it never happens. In all of the studies that I have read, whether they are in favor of SROs or against SROs, agree that we need to focus on the results of the belonging survey from 2022 in our district. The board and the administrators really need to think about what the community, what the students are telling us about their experience in the schools and how we can fix that. We need to do everything in our power to ensure that our resources are being used responsibly for mental health support, training and threat assessment, and support for our teachers, families, and students who are reporting concerning behavior.
Can I get a rebuttal, please?
Yes,
Yeah.
Taki, 1/32 rebuttal.
Okay. I wanna push back on the idea that if we don't put SROs, we're not doing more for security. I think the solution to, protecting a child from gun violence shouldn't be that a 5-year-old has to walk by the barrel of a gun every day. That's not the best we can do. There's other things like, I don't know, here, like an idea might be to have a cop, work with the town and work with the budget of the town to have a cop car parked right out down the street from a school during full school hours so that they can respond under a minute, or have more and more information available to parents about what to watch for and gun safety and how to store your guns. These are all measures.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Is this a rebuttal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just based on one anecdote of you walking through a school doesn't necessarily indicate a reason for why the SROs do not work. Really, like Alyssa said, Officer Michelle is working there and the kids embrace her, and she's not just somebody with a barreled gun on her. She's part of the fabric of the community there. So I think that I reject the notion of not doing everything we can, and some of your ideas, sure, they might work incrementally, but we need immediate action here. This is something that our kids' lives are at stake.
Okay, thank you. The next question.
Can I have a timeout? 'Cause I just have to leave, and then you can start, okay?
We're switching topics.
All right.
You said yes to stay. She's asking.
Okay, the next question, first to Ms. Rajabad today.
Rajazadeh.
Rajab today.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It happens all the time.
Many questions were submitted about district curriculum and curricular decisions. What is the role of a Board of Education member regarding curriculum? Is there a role for parents in curricular decisions?
So, wait, can you just repeat? I missed the middle part of the question.
I'll repeat the whole question.
Okay,
I'll
okay,
repeat the whole
okay.
question.
Yeah.
Many questions were submitted about district curriculum and curricular decisions. What is the role of a Board of Education member regarding curriculum? Is there a role for parents in curricular decisions?
Okay. Okay, so I think this, coming back to one of my opening answers, we're really seeing what happens when the Board of Education, we really in this country in the last few years are seeing the power of the Board of Education when it comes to curriculum and designing curriculum, right? So in Florida and in Colorado, like there's complete erasure of certain parts of history now happening because of Board of Education and parents and so I think that the most important thing when you're thinking about the role of the Board of Education in curriculum is to really to first of all take that responsibility very seriously and to just make sure that we're preparing our students for the world they live in. They're going to leave Chappaqua and they're going to enter a very different world, and we have to make sure that the classroom is not the living room, right? The classroom is supposed to be a place where children are going to get prepared for a world beyond it, and that world beyond it is going to make them uncomfortable at times, and they have to really learn how to be comfortable with discomfort, and at times it's going to make them feel empowered, and they have to know what to do with that empowerment. And so I think that we need to make sure as Board of Education that we're hiring the right people and helping the district hire the right people, and then really trust that that's their expertise and make sure that we're empowering them to make the right choices for our children's education.
For the role of the board in curriculum, it's actually, Superintendent Ackerman and Assistant Superintendent Pease of curriculum are the people who make the decisions about what the curriculum is in this district. Those are the two people that we have hired for their expertise in this exact area, and they are the ones who currently make those decisions. The board obviously approves things that they bring to us, but it is not the board's role to make curriculum decisions per se. They go off of what Ackerman and Pease have suggested, and obviously with a lot of discussion. I think what we really can see here is a way to have the teachers feel more empowered, because once the curriculum is decided, we can help the teachers really take more of a role in how we implement it. If they decide that we're moving, Regents bio from 9th grade down to 8th grade, and that's a decision that Adam Pease has made, then we can partner with our teachers and decide how we're going to implement that curriculum. What textbook are we going to use? How are we going to teach it? And teachers can be happier in their job, I think, if we give them a little more wiggle room to be supported and empowered to teach what we're telling them to teach, but in a way that they want to teach it. And I don't necessarily think that parents directly should be influencing curriculum, other than the fact that as constituents in the district, parents, obviously their opinions matter and are going to be talking to the board and always telling us the directions that they like our district to go. But we need the experts that we've hired in curriculum to be the people who make those decisions.
So the board's role with respect to curriculum decisions is to ensure that Dr. Ackerman, the superintendent, is meeting the expectations of the community. Another aspect of the board's role is communicating with the community about the curriculum and our expectations, and also working with the administration to develop the 5-year plan. So if there is a concern about curriculum, making sure that that is focused on when they are implementing and developing the 5-year strategic plan. I think that the board can work with the administration to make sure that they are empowering teachers and specialists to make the most of the resources that we have. With respect to the parents' role, I think that it's important to remember that they're making decisions at home for what's best for their families, but that they can make sure that they are questioning the district. There's a respectful way to do that. There's a respectful way to have discourse and have greater understanding about what's going on in your education. But that doesn't mean that they get to decide or direct. the curriculum in particular?
I have a degree in broadcast journalism and I've worked in finance for 17 years, so I don't think the role of a board member is to develop curriculum or have much input onto the curriculum. I think we have people like Ms. Ackman, Dr. Pease, I mean, they have higher education in developing curriculum. We have wonderful teachers in this community. I want them implementing the curriculum, but having some latitude and autonomy to teach it as they see fit. I want them to feel empowered at every single level, that they have their fingerprints on what their children are learning, and they have an open voice and an open messaging system between them and the administration. Because if not, the whole thing breaks down. I think the teachers need to feel that empowerment. I want them, these teachers, to feel that way. I want them to be the ones implementing the curriculum the way they see fit. And in that, we're gonna develop critical thinkers here and having diversity of viewpoints with all of our children and all of our students, because that to me is the most important. As a board member, I would serve as a conduit. I would hear out parental concerns, bring them back to the administration, but truthfully, I think the teachers are the ones who should be teaching our students.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Ms. Dorfman. Many questions were submitted about diversity, equity, and inclusion. How can the school district best create an inclusive environment that is a safe space for learning for students of all ethnicities, abilities, and identities?
I think we really need to focus on this area. Now that Mr. Marcus, who was our assistant superintendent of diversity, is no longer here, the district is putting in 3 positions to make up for his 1 position. One of them is a parent liaison, and the other 2 are professional development staff members who are going to be working with our teachers to help them best teach around these topics. To teach them how to make their classroom a safe space, to teach them how to have texts that have sensitive material in them and how to teach those in a respectful way and how to have everyone feel included and safe in the classroom. I feel very strongly that we need to focus on this area. I think some of our cultural enrichment programs that we do at the elementary and middle school through the PTA can be focused purely on these areas as well. I think we can really make it a point to bring in every speaker, have every puppet show, everything we can find that talks to these issues and really get back to teaching our kids empathy and kindness and respect for others. I think due to COVID, a lot of our children lost some social skills and they lost the ability to connect with each other. And I think we really have to focus on their emotional support across the board and get them, help them in any way we can to support them to regain some of the skills we lost during COVID. And I just think that diversity and inclusion is a really important issue that we need to bring into our classrooms every day across all the schools and really help our teachers to teach this material in a respectful way, because you have to learn about the history, not to repeat it.
So the belonging survey that was conducted in our district showed improvements even from 2021 to 2022 with respect to diversity and inclusion. And that's wonderful and it's a great start, but the work definitely needs to continue. And this is an issue that I have spoken on at the board meetings several times over the past year because it is very important. And as Alyssa had mentioned, there are 3 positions. One is Ms. Culpa, who will be the parent liaison and support for students, and 2 staff developers at the elementary and secondary levels to help design lessons. However, we need to make sure that we are listening to the students. The fact that so many students felt that they had to come to the board meetings to advocate for themselves is disappointing. And that should be our job as parents and as administration and as board members. We need to make sure that we're the one advocating for our students and not making them feel like they need to advocate for themselves. I also think that the fact that there were 16 reported incidents at the middle school in the 3rd quarter is very sad. And particularly because we know that not everything that happens is reported, and that has been shown in our district, so this is definitely an area that we need to continue to focus on. I also think that our district sometimes forgets that DEI work includes not just race, but also socioeconomic and persons with disabilities.
I'm a product of the New York City school system, so this was not something that I had to deal with when I was younger. I grew up in a very diverse area, but the demographics of Chappaqua make this a very challenging and sensitive issue, and I think we're making a huge mistake not really incorporating and reaching out to the minorities and people of color in this district and engaging them and asking them the questions. Because I can't speak on behalf of people of color. They need to speak for themselves and they need to engage the community and engage with us. And we need to all come together to a solution to a very, very big problem, especially here. We need to ensure that we're talking to the community and asking the right questions even, and we need to educate ourselves through discussion points. But what we do, as Alyssa said, we did have a lot of COVID learning loss. We need to make sure that we are still focusing, our education is still the main focus, and when we balance this out and we incorporate it as a fabric of what we do as a community, it won't feel like extra work, and it shouldn't feel like extra work. We need to really ask like how we are still here in society today, and we are, unfortunately, but we need to make it more of a discussion point on a regular basis than making it instituted part of our curriculum.
So DEI is one of my area of expertise, and there's a lot about that in my website. I'm not going to go too into that. The school is doing a lot. They have a lot of programs, they have a lot of speakers, they have a lot of professional developments, but it's not working. It's like suspensions have increased, and it's because of hate speech and it's because of racism. Like those are the reasons, So there's just a lot of work left to do in this town when it comes to DEI. And I get that when we, talk about DEI, it's like these buzzwords like diversity, equity, but at the heart of it, what it really is just like, is every student included? It's just that. Like it's and that doesn't happen when things are consistently being designed for a majority, right? Because marginalized students are never going to be a statistical majority. They're just not. So even when you're thinking about the budget, like how do you design, like they're just not going to be included if you're thinking of a majority. So as long as we're relegating the work of DEI to these roles and these positions that are siloed and under-resourced and don't have proper authority, we're going to fail like we did with our setting up the position of Philip Marcus, and we didn't set him up for success. And Dr. Ackerman's very clear and has reflected on that she didn't. And we're going to fail over and over in these iterations if we continue to relegate and silo. I think that we don't have to know all the answers and we don't have to know all that's out there, but as a Board of Education member, what we can do is consistently, and I would do, is consistently make sure that every curriculum, every point we're asking, how does this include LGBTQ students? How does it include students with disabilities? How does it include students of color?
Thank you. Okay, the next question, I'll go first to Ms. Flom, and this is another multi-part question. Community members have expressed concern about teacher retention. What can be done to retain our teachers? What is the role of the board in the hiring and retention of district personnel?
So the board's role is to oversee Dr. Ackerman and also the budget in the district. Those are their two main roles. And the board isn't supposed to get into the day-to-day nitty-gritty operations of hiring and firing individual teachers. However, I've spoken with the administration, in particular Andrew Corsillier, about how we can improve the tenure process, and that's with consistency and urgency. The district has started a new Project 720 program for the probationary teachers, and that's a good start. However, I think that the administration recognizes that they can look at the administrators who are doing the observations and make sure that the priorities for improving are consistent so that the probationary teachers feel supported and understand what they need to do better. And also they can focus on urgency and making sure that they are conveying to the probationary teachers what it is that needs to be done differently, when it needs to be done differently, and how and why it's important. And what they can do to make sure that they are a successful member of Chappaqua Central School District going forward. I do think that the board can communicate to families how they can better support our teachers in the district. I think that that would be a helpful part of the board's role.
I think regardless of your vocation, you really need to feel supported and heard when you have your job. And teaching has sort of a juxtaposition. It's a thankless job on some levels, but it can be the most gratifying job when done correctly. I believe the teachers in the room need latitude and professional freedom to feel that they have autonomy over the curriculum. I get the sense from some of the teachers that I have spoken to, both past and present, that there is a fear of freedom of expression from them. If they disagree with something, the way it's being taught, they fear for their job security, so they don't actually express that opinion. And I don't think that that's a very toxic environment for teachers to operate under. And if that continues to happen, then we're going to see a high turnover rate and lose a lot of teachers, and that cycle then starts from there, and then you have a really difficult time recruiting the best teachers, which Chappaqua has been notorious to do. We have to ask ourselves, are we supporting our teachers? Are we setting them up for failure? Or are we setting them up to succeed? I think the tenure process needs to be a lot more transparent. I think we should be doing constant evaluations where we're getting feedback from parents and students on their teachers throughout the year instead of right towards the end. I was moved last week at the board meeting. Many kids spoke up on behalf of Mr. Halloran, and he will no longer be in the district, and I think that that's there in no way after going to that meeting could you think that's a positive development for the kids of this district. If he was given evaluations and it was a more transparent process, I think he'd still be here.
So the number of teachers leaving is really, really high, and it's really concerning. And I think it's really hard, especially after everything we've been through, and our children have been through. Like if they formed a connection with a teacher, and if a teacher has formed a connection with them, it's really hard for that, for that teacher to not be coming back. That being said, teacher burnout is at an all-time high that it's ever been in this country, like nationally since COVID. Studies have shown that it's tripled. Turnover in this country is at the highest for teachers, at the highest that it's been, probably in the history of this profession. So acknowledging that we're not alone doesn't mean that we're not, like, we shouldn't do something about it. We should, and I think we really have to understand what's happening. When we're thinking of teacher retention, we shouldn't just be thinking about how can we retain as many teachers as we, hire as possible, right? Because tenure is serious, tenure is forever. So we have to think about how we can retain the teachers that we want for our students, right? And so I think the question is then, as a community and as a district and as a board, is what do we value in our teachers? So the district office is very, very clear and direct that their expectations of teachers are very, very high. They'll say that. And they'll say they're also very outcome driven. And when you ask them why, and you kind of dig, the understanding is that that's what we want. We want, we also have very high expectations of our teachers, and we also want them to be outcome driven. And so maybe that's a place where we can broaden the definition of success and kind of report that to the to the district and the board.
So the district did a survey in March asking the teachers their sense of belonging, and the results were 70%, let's round up. 70% of our teachers feel like they have a sense of community and belonging here. It sounds pretty good at first, but when you think about it, it means 30% of our teachers do not feel a sense of belonging. And I really feel like it's unfortunate that they don't feel empowered and supported and happy to that degree. And I really think that we need to do everything we can within the confines of the curriculum to give them empowerment to teach in the way that they enjoy teaching. So I think another issue is that a lot of tenure decisions were delayed due to COVID. We didn't have any tenure things happening while COVID was happening. People got extensions. So this coming time period, we are seeing a lot more teachers up for tenure than normally there would be. So that's another reason why maybe the numbers are higher this year. But I just feel strongly that a teacher shouldn't find out after a 4-year process that they're not getting tenure. There needs to be more transparency from the district earlier on. In all honesty, most times we know after a year if someone's not a good fit. So I just think that through all of these review process, we need to be giving them both positive and negative feedback. And in that negative feedback, a clear review of if it's not working out earlier on. No one should have to go through 4 years to find out that they didn't get tenure. I just think that, the professional development program right now is optional for new teachers. I don't think it should be. I think the 720 program should be required. Even if you are a seasoned teacher from another district, I think you should have to go through our professional development and join our community.
Okay, thank you. The next question, first to Mr. Auerbach. People have a lot of thoughts about the Button Hook property, ranging from questions about taxpayer money spent to prepare for a sale to a developer, to strong desires to preserve the property, trees, and artifacts found there. If elected, what steps would you hope to take to resolve the Button Hook situation?
So I was there 2 days ago, and I'm still not sure if I got any ticks, but praying for the best. It is a beautiful space, and obviously there's litigation that's occurring right now that is sort of putting things on pause. But in my professional life, I have 2 edicts. Number 1 is your first loss is always your best loss, and number 2 is you do not throw good money after bad. And it seems that the district over years has done a little bit of both of that. Now, again, I'm not privy to the inside baseball knowledge of all of these negotiations, but the society, there's historical significance on that land. I mean, if you walk it for 5 minutes, you know that there is. The group who wants to preserve it, they're very passionate about it. They've made a financial offer that, after litigation, I believe is a fair offer, and I do think that it will be accepted. I think this might end up being a non-issue after the litigation is over. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I think I was moved when I went to the, it's very hard to move me. I was moved when I went to the property. I was really impressed, and I mean, there's so much there. I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And if we can get a deal done, we should do the deal.
So there's a lot that's become clear about the 20.3 acre hilltop site called Button Hook over the last many years, because it's been on the agenda for a long time. 1, it's incredibly costly to develop that land. 2, the community cares about it, and if you had the privilege of attending an event, you'd see there's eyes on it, you know, far and wide, not just in this town. And 2, it just seems inefficient at this point. You know, at what point does this move on from being like a rigorous attention to detail, being on the budget over and over again, to just like a sign of inefficiency? But I think none of that really matters to me, because I think this is a place where we should stand up for our values. And the issue of Button Hook is one of Indigenous rights, and it's one of climate justice. And the Friends of Button Hook have forwarded us a lot of letters, many like letters from Indigenous tribes, some of whose land we sit on. And the letters say like, look, this matters to us. It was our ancestors, it was wrongfully taken, and there's just things on it that you don't care about that are actually sacred. So aside from all the logistical and bureaucratic and financial reasons that make sense for us to sell it to the only people who have made a bid for it, we have an opportunity here to not perpetuate a cycle of Indigenous and colonial violence. And as a body that is dedicated to the education of children, I think what better way to teach a new and ethical way of being in the world than to model it and have the courage and just stand up and do what's right.
So I totally agree. I think the Button Hook property should be preserved. Right now it's tied up in litigation that nothing can be done at the moment. Everyone's hands are tied until that is done. But the Friends of Button Hook have put in an offer, and I think eventually, once the litigation is over, it would be a great thing for us to sell it to them. Just as a backstory, the property was gifted to the Chappaqua district in 1973, and we were going to build a school on it, and that never happened. So I think that we've had this property on our roster for a very long time, and I think that at this point, we didn't know at that time when we started to sell it, about 10 years ago now, what was on the land. But now that we know, you can't unknow that. And I think that it's become, not only is it a forest, but it is a sacred space. And I think that it would be, it's the right thing to do to preserve it. And I hope that that's what the district does moving forward.
So I'm actually really glad to hear that everyone feels this way. This is an issue that I've spoken on many times during board meetings. This DEI and before and after school care are things that were really important to me this year at the meetings. I think with respect to the question, what steps to take to resolve it, I think that the district needs to make sure that it's defending itself appropriately in the current litigation. I know that a motion to dismiss has been brought by the district, which is great, and hopefully the judge grants it. Right now we're in a holding pattern. After that's decided, and hopefully in our favor, I think that we need to look at how we can meet our fiduciary obligations as a district, as board members. There are different ways that you can do that. One way is that we could preserve the land and use it for educational purposes, whether that's field trips, cultural immersion lessons about the indigenous landscapes. There's stone markings that are there that we can learn more about, or even doing science field trips to learn about the soil and testing and things like that. If that's not something that is a viable option for the district or something that the community doesn't want, the alternative would be selling to an entity like Friends of Button Hook that agrees to preserve the land. This is very important, and fiduciary obligations are not always about just getting the most money at a given time. We have to balance the interests of the community and district and consider the long-term impacts of our decisions fiscally, environmentally, and culturally.
Okay, thank you. The next question, another multi-part question, I'm warning you. First to Ms. Rajab-Zadeh. Have you reviewed the results of the recent special education audit? Do you think the district is making good progress in implementing the recommendations of the auditor? Is there anything else you believe the district needs to focus on to address the needs of students with disabilities?
Yes, I have consulted, yes, so the first is a yes and no question, yes, I have, and I've talked to, parents and admin at length about it. And it was, some of the stuff that came out in the audit and it shows why these things matter, because some of them are really things that are in the New York City schools, really like they've been there for a long time that we're just implementing. And I think when it comes to the, the issue of inclusion of students with disabilities, as members of a public school, we're serving the students that surround us, and there's no greater health check for how we're doing as a public school than checking in to see how we're including the marginalized students, and in that case, the students with disabilities and the parents of those students. I work, a lot of the things that were in the special audit report are familiar to me because I work with ICT classrooms, integrated co-teaching classrooms, and the studies and the research out there that just shows the impact, the positive impact on measures like that for everyone in the classroom is just unarguable. I've also learned a lot from the parents of students with disabilities who I've spoken to, and I'm really humbled and also frustrated on their behalf that so much of the changes and inclusions that happen for students with disabilities either happen because the PTA is volunteering to do things for students with disabilities that the district is doing for able-bodied students already, or that it's happening because of relentless advocacy. And I think that this is what happens once again, when inclusion is relegated and siloed to these departments. You need to constantly be asking yourself, is everyone included?
Thank you.
I think inclusion is really necessary. My children went to Roaring Brook where they had inclusion classes, and my children learned empathy from being in a classroom with children of varying abilities. At Greeley, they have the Pathways program where the children are included in a lot of things with the other kids on campus who have a lot of integrated programs together to join the two communities together, so the children in the Pathways program are not isolated from the other kids on the campus. I think that the special ed programs are really important for empathy for all the children. Getting back to everyone's emotional feelings after COVID, or lack of emotions, sometimes in some cases after COVID, we really want to get all of our children to have emotional support. And I just think that our special ed kids and our kids with disabilities need to feel as much a part of our community as possible. And we need all of our kids who are interacting with them throughout the day to understand what a gift that is to them as well, to be able to learn from each other and to be able to understand that just because someone looks a different way or can't do what you can do physically or mentally doesn't mean that they are not as worthy as you are and as important as you are. And I think that there's a lot to be learned across the spectrum from all the kids being together. And I really think that we need to keep working towards this goal and doing better, because as the audit shows, we need to move forward.
So yes, I have reviewed the special ed audit, and we haven't addressed all the issues that the audit has pointed out. For example, resource rooms in the elementary schools hasn't happened. We have done other things, and I know that our district is focusing on ICT for Algebra 8 and has also implemented MTSS, the multi-tiered system of support, as well as DBT, the dialectical behavior therapy, which is great. However, one of the big concerns for me and a huge red flag is that the classification rate in Chappaqua is almost half of the state average, and it's below the average of similar districts as well, and that's concerning to me. When I spoke with an assistant superintendent in the district, she was not concerned about the classification rate, and she said, well, IEPs are lower than average, we have a lesser number, but we are higher with 504s. And that's concerning to me because I don't think that we live in a magical bubble where these classifications don't exist and that these students don't need additional help. So I think that we need to focus on that. She did say that through their response to the special education audit, additional students are returning from places like Windward, which is great because it shows, she believed that it showed that the parents were trusting our students in the district. However, I think that is it that they're trusting us or is it that they have litigation fatigue? And that's something we need to look at.
So admittedly, I started this process not having much education on this, so I went out and I educated myself the last couple of weeks. I've spoken to countless parents of kids with special needs, and the overarching sentiment that they all expressed to me was that they're really happy with the improvements that are being made. Is it perfect? Of course not. But they all had glowing reviews on the Pathways program at Greeley, and they see a world where things have gotten better. But to Shakufe's point, I do think that there's far too much advocacy and effort necessary from the parental level. We need to be better about creating proactive programming that can address every student's need in the classroom. But not just from an educational perspective. We need to keep in mind, as Alyssa pointed out, the social and emotional development as all of our children as well, particularly children with special needs. There needs to be there certainly needs to be better transparency throughout the district, but in this case in particular, sometimes they cut programs and they don't let the parents know. That can never happen. That's not something that if I were a board member, I would ever want to see happen, and I would fight for maximum transparency between building level and the parents of all the children with special needs. And I do think there's a big problem with so many kids leaving the district to go elsewhere for middle school. I think that also neglects the social component. We're not just teaching our kids to learn inside the classroom. They're making lifelong friendships at these schools, and they shouldn't have to leave.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we'll go first to Ms. Dorfman. None of you are current Board of Education members. Have you attended Board of Education meetings? Is there anything you would propose to improve district transparency and communication with the community?
Yes, I've been to many board meetings over the years, and there are lots of things I would do to make transparency better. First of all, the Board of Ed does not email. Superintendents email, the PTA emails, but the Board of Ed does not email. I feel like in this day and age, we really could be sending out a monthly email with the agenda, with our things that we're working on 3 years out, 5 years out, just keeping the parents abreast of things that we're thinking about. Foreign language at the elementary level, something that's like being tossed around, and like we are starting that process now, and it's not going to happen for a while, but we just need to keep the parents abreast of what is going on in the district. I think we need Q&A sessions with the Board of Ed, or some kind of coffee hours or office hours where people can come and have a little feedback and dialogue. Right now, the public comment section of the meeting is one-sided. The public makes their comments and the board cannot respond, and people don't always feel comfortable emailing or calling a board member who they don't know. If we have meetings occasionally where people could come and just ask questions and have dialogue, I think it would really help parents feel like they understood what was going on, because not everybody has time to come to the meetings. Even finding the agenda. To get the agenda emailed to you, you have to email the district clerk, Lisa Elsner, and ask her to get on the email list to get the agenda sent to you. And that's something that parents don't all know or aren't going to do. So I think that we can make it a little bit easier for parents to know what's going on, to know what we're working on, to know what we've been planning, and open that dialogue and communication so people feel like we're being transparent and they can participate with us.
So as I've mentioned, I have attended the meetings this year. I think I was at all but one when my husband had COVID and I couldn't care for my son. I think that our district, the board could definitely improve on communication. I think that the district in general has difficulty communicating effectively. There are so many different avenues that parents are receiving information, and it can be very overwhelming. You know, we're getting 1,000 different emails from different groups, different PTA groups. We have one app for the teachers and the principals to use, but a different one for other information. It's a lot. If we were to streamline the process and make sure that the parents are having the information that they need in a more centralized location, I think that that would be helpful. I would say that my experience has been that the board has been transparent in what they can be transparent about, and I know that they frequently reiterate that you can reach out to them, and I think that in my experience it has been very helpful and that they have spent a lot of time with me individually. Similarly, the administration has, but not everyone has time for that, and it's not fair to expect that of everyone. So I think that focusing on communication would be very important for the board going forward.
I've been to one board meeting last week, because of that, I don't think that I'm in position to comment on the current board's level of communication with the public because I've never sat in that chair. But I will tell you that I have an approachable face. People like to talk to me, and I am an open book, and I will talk to whoever wants to talk to me. You send me an email, you're gonna get an email back. You give me a phone call, I'm gonna give you a phone call back. Now, serving on the board, there's certain things that you cannot divulge to the public, and I understand that. But you're gonna have to muzzle me because I really am I like communicating with people, and I think this role is sort of one where you do need to listen to the public and you do need to take the community at large, what their opinion is, and you need to then take it back to the administration. So for me, I think transparency is everything. I'm always willing to communicate with whoever wants to talk to me, and regardless of the forum, I never think an email or a phone call should go unanswered. That's just my opinion. That's sort of an edict I live in life, but if I was in one of these seats, I certainly would ascribe to that.
So I answer this question with utmost respect for the current board members. And you know, they've always responded to me and to my emails and to my asks with utmost generosity. So I'm prepared for all the responsibilities and time commitments of being a board member, like, you know, even the unpaid part. But I think what's scariest to me is that it seems like once you move past being a community member to being a candidate to then being on the board of education, you just kind of like something changes. Like you kind of, I don't know, like it's like you like disappear into this hole of absence. Like why? I don't know what happens, but it feels like suddenly something changes, and that and maybe I'll know when I'm there and can tell you, report back. But I feel like it matters that it doesn't feel that way, you know. And I know that there's efforts being made on the board to kind of like reduce to make it feel differently. But it matters because where there's mystery, there's conspiracy. And then where there's conspiracy, it's just nothing can happen productively, right? It's like toxic for trust and it's toxic for consensus building and for community building. And so I think, you know, I know that there's some things that are mandated by law that can't be discussed, but I really want to try to diversify the ways that we can engage with the board. And I want to try to find the right platform to do it because Facebook is not it. So finding the right platform to kind of engage with the public more is something that's important.
Thank you. And this will be our final question for this evening. The question will go first to Ms. Flom. What do you believe are the greatest strengths of our district? What challenges do you think exist to maintaining these strengths over the next 5 years?
So one of the greatest strengths in our district is our teachers. They are a huge asset to our community, and that is reflected in the fact that they're benefits and salary is over 70% of the budget. The challenges to maintaining that, we've talked a little bit about that tonight with the teacher turnover issues and the things that we can do to improve that. I also think that our district is very strong, particularly this current administration, in not making rash decisions. I think that we have to make sure that we are looking at all of our options and making sure that it's the best long-term solution, not just what's best right now. And I think that Dr. Ackerman has focused on that. Another strength is obviously the resources that we have in this district. Even when we have issues, you know, with curriculum, with a particular curriculum, or there's something that people are concerned about, the families are engaged, they're asking questions, they're helping the students get what they need. And I think that that is something that is wonderful and not all the districts have. Challenges to maintaining that, we're all busy, the parents are busy, and you can get fatigued from that and having to be engaged in that. I think that the board, if it works on its communication skills, there can be a level of trust so that the parents understand that the board is working with them and the administration to achieve the best for our students.
I think the biggest strength of the school district is the passion of the community. Every single parent that I've met here really is invested in their child's future and their child's education. And I think that two-way street really can create magic almost. And I think that's been proven out. It really is reputationally one of the best high schools in the country. But I will tell you a story about my high school, which was actually really well thought of 25 years ago. And in my wife and I considering moving our children somewhere, that was never a consideration. My high school is a wasteland because they rested on their laurels and they didn't continue to strive for excellence. Educationally, we need to continue to strive for excellence. If we rest on the laurels of our reputation now, then we can turn into Susan Wagner High School in Staten Island. And I don't want that for anybody. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that for any of the kids in this district. And I think it starts with the teachers. I think we have an alarming retention problem at the moment. I think teachers are leaving. I think teachers are unhappy. And I think we need to figure out why. And I think we need to get them to stay here. If not, our district is going to have an issue.
There's so many strengths with our district, and it's, you know, from things like the fact that 5-year-olds go out with little trays to get ice cream with their school bucks, to things like the ways that students showed up for the STEM Fest and all the different projects they had. There's so much creativity in our students. There's so many electives. The greenhouse is amazing. There's all these resources. The parents really care. Like it's just amazing to be in a school district, and I think that's partly because of this district that parents also care, and just honestly that, you know, there's 4 people trying to do more for this school district. Like all of these things are such are because our schools are so good. But I think that the biggest challenge we're facing, and we didn't really talk about this, but is mental health. You know, studies have now placed youth in high achieving, and if you want the exact citation to this, please email me, have placed youth in high achieving schools. They've added them to the list of at-risk youth, along with kids living in poverty, foster care, recent immigrants, and those with incarcerated parents. Anxiety, depression, substance abuse are 3 times the national average in high-performing schools. Just because our students are performing well doesn't mean they're well necessarily. And so if we don't really try to do more about this, it's at the heart of everything, right? It's at the heart of using the resources and being able to thrive and learn.
I would agree that our teachers are our number one strength in this district. We need them empowered, we need them to feel happy. We want to keep them here, and we want to ask them to bring their friends and other high-level teachers here as well. Our community is also a strength. We're super engaged. And we have great programs like CSF, Chappaqua School Fund, Horace Greeley Scholarship Fund, booster programs that our parents are always giving back of their time and also of their money in a lot of cases to help us with initiatives and grants for our schools when our budget cannot meet the demand. Where our strengths are our high academic rigor, our curriculum planning that is scaffolding on a 5-year plan, 5 years out. We're always rotating through at a different section where we are in our curriculum planning. We're always thinking about 5 years out. Another one of our strengths is our ability to pivot. Look at our response to COVID. It was tremendous. It was second to none. And we got our kids back in the district, in the building, learning in a time when all the surrounding states were not be able to do that. So I think our district is strong at being able to pivot, work in a crisis. And I would agree that the emotional needs of our kids is a place that we can do better work. Post-COVID, our kids are emotionally, really set back and have regressed. And I think that we need to focus on that challenge going forward. The ruler program that we did prior to COVID is no longer sufficient to help our kids with their emotional situation that we have going on. And so I think that we have a lot of strengths, but we need to focus on a few areas to move forward.
Okay, and Mr. Auerbach has requested his second 30 seconds.
I'm gonna use my last rebuttal to take the edge off a little bit. Shikufe, I'm telling you, the proliferation of the ice cream in the building's a big problem. So
I've heard.
it's not a strength. It's definitely a weakness. Ruby has had ice cream 7 straight days. Yeah, a little levity here, no? This is not really my vibe.
Okay, so thank you, and now is time for the candidates to deliver their closing statements. As we stated earlier, they're delivered in the reverse order of the opening statements, and each candidate is allowed 1 minute and 30 seconds for their closing statement. So we begin with Mr. Auerbach and we will work backwards.
First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us all the opportunity to express our thoughts and ideas to the community at large. I'd like to also thank my fellow candidates. If you put forth the effort to get here, then you have my admiration and my respect. It's a challenging undertaking while also balancing your family and your professional lives. Voters, I just want to leave you with one message, whether it be for me, Alyssa, Shikufe, or Barrett. Make sure you vote on Tuesday. There's a lot at stake here, and our community should have our voice heard when the decisions relative to our educational system, our financial health, and most importantly, our children are considered. I hope that in getting to know me over the past 3 years, the past 3 weeks, or merely through this evening, I've proven myself to be worthy of this representation. Above all else, I'm here as a dad. I want what is best for my children's future. But I am not myopic or selfish. I've proven that through my time here. Walk into a playground, a birthday party, a softball field, the children of this community know who I am. Their parents know what I'm about. I do not take that responsibility of fighting for their best interests lightly. My professional career makes me qualified to attack all the challenges we face as a district with a mindful eye on the bottom line. But my skills as a human being, my ability to listen, to learn, to be open-minded, engaged, my willingness to have tough conversations and make difficult decisions, my accessibility to the community, these are the intangible components that could make me a great board member. I'm passionate about this community, and I feel energized to share my perspective through this role to continue to foster the excellence the school district has become synonymous with.
I want to thank everyone again for the time, listening, being informed, and hopefully voting on May 16th. I think that my knowledge about the district, all the things that I've learned the past year sitting in on the board meetings, will be valuable. I understand how the district works. I have worked with the administrators, I've worked with the board members, even when they didn't agree with me on issues. But my focus was always what is best for our community, what is best for our families. My experience as an advocate, both in the district but also professionally, will be an asset to the district. And I hope that as Matt mentioned, all 4 of us are obviously really excited about giving our time, and we've all worked really hard for this, and I hope that everyone is making a decision based on what they think is best for the community. Vote for me, Barrett Flom.
As parents, we want to make sure that the board is holding our schools to the highest academic standards while keeping our children safe and making their emotional well-being a top priority. To have a strong Board of Ed, you need members whose judgment you trust. I feel strongly that the board needs to be more proactive in communicating issues through monthly emails, periodic office hours, or Q&A sessions. This will promote transparency and participation. The safety of our kids needs to be our biggest priority. We never want to look back and wish we had done more to keep them safe. SROs or some increased police presence at our schools will allow us another level of deterrent that unfortunately is becoming increasingly necessary. In addition, the emotional needs of our students need to be at the forefront. We need to move away from the ruler program and focus on the post-COVID realities of our students' emotional regression. They need social skills remediation and proactive coping mechanisms. The teachers are our strongest asset in this district. They are on the front lines with our children and deserve our support. We want our teachers to feel happy and empowered, and we need to attract the highest level candidates from diverse backgrounds. The district needs to do a better job earlier in the tenure process of letting teachers know where they stand. Increasing academic rigor and growing our curriculum will keep our district one of the strongest in the country. While the superintendents decide what we should teach, the teachers can help us best determine how they should teach it. Being on the board is a huge responsibility, one which I take very seriously. If elected, I will speak for every child and listen to the entire community. I have the years of experience necessary to understand the complexities of this district. I have the support of our teachers, and I hope I have yours as well. And thank you to the League.
There is no debate that everyone on this panel cares deeply about our children and our students. There is no debate that everyone on this panel wants to serve our children and our schools. The question before you tonight, and what you need to think about when we go to the polls on May 16th, and I will as well, is whose qualifications can best serve your students in the Board of Education. Because there are so many, many ways to serve children in this community, as the community has shown us, and they're equally valuable. I'm not just running because I deeply care. I'm running because I've built a lifetime of expertise in this work. I realize that my kids are young and that I realize it's a hesitation for some people, but here's the thing. I go into schools regularly, I work with schools, I teach, I survey students, I design curriculum, I run PDs, I've been in the classroom, I strategize educational initiatives, I'm involved with the community, I do DEI work, I work with students with disabilities, I work in ICT classrooms. I understand the way a school works, and because my students, my own children, are young, I'm not going to be quick to compare your experience with my own. Your experience will build the foundation for my research. I've spent my life making sure that students are seen, heard, and valued, and I hope you'll give me the honor to do the same for yours.
I want to thank the candidates and the audience, as well as all the community members who submitted their questions ahead of time. A reminder, this forum has been videotaped and will be available online beginning tomorrow. And also to remind you of an important slogan of the League of Women Voters: democracy is not a spectator sport. Please remember to vote on May 16th, and thank you all.
And our local league wants to thank Alice from our sister partner league in Rivertown. Thank you for your excellent efforts in keeping the forum running, and we are literally going to end 1 minute early. And I want to thank all the candidates for taking the time to share their views to the community in written form and coming out tonight, and best of luck to everyone. And remember to vote, and you can still, I think there's still time to get absentee ballots if you're not going to be here on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.